Africa is emerging as a vibrant player on the global stage, increasingly recognized for its immense potential in production and trade. As companies gradually shift their focus from traditional manufacturing powerhouses like China to the African continent, they unlock opportunities that allow Africa to proudly showcase its diverse products and solidify its status as a reliable global supplier. In this transformative journey, digital connectivity becomes the lifeblood of trade opportunities, weaving a web of easier transactions and collaborations between African nations. This newfound connectivity paves the way for enhanced trade agreements and greater access for consumers throughout the continent, fostering a thriving economic ecosystem. Yet, as Africa navigates the complexities of global disruptions, there emerges a pressing need for cohesive trade policies. By promoting intra-African trade and dismantling the barriers that hinder progress, the continent can build a more resilient economic environment, capable of weathering external shocks. Furthermore, the digitization of customs processes stands as a beacon of efficiency in the logistics realm. By embracing digital solutions, Africa can streamline logistics and drastically cut down on the financial losses that arise from inadequate systems, making this transformation crucial for the continent's trade landscape. To support these efforts, significant investment in infrastructure becomes vital, particularly in enhancing road and rail networks. These networks are the arteries that enable seamless movement of goods across Africa. Without them, any logistics initiative risks becoming futile. Additionally, the rise of commodity exchanges is revolutionizing trade dynamics, fostering price transparency and empowering farmers with enhanced bargaining power. This trend is particularly impactful in the agricultural sector, ensuring that producers are equipped to thrive. In Nigeria, maize and soybeans stand out as cornerstone commodities, intricately linked to the poultry industry. The demand for these staples is driven by the growing population and increasing agricultural necessities, highlighting their crucial role in the nation's economy. However, the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement has yet to make substantial waves in Nigeria. Nevertheless, there remains a sense of optimism among businesses about the prospective benefits that this initiative could bring, casting a hopeful light on the future. Government participation is paramount in enhancing logistics and efficiency in the agricultural sector. By including small businesses in policy-making processes, there emerges a pathway for growth and collaboration, vital for the sector's development. Yet, challenges persist, particularly regarding the uncertainty surrounding tariff breaks, which has led to a reduction in orders from buyers. This situation poses hurdles for agricultural and commodity exchanges across Africa, making it difficult for producers to compete on the global stage. As these challenges loom, a collective African narrative becomes paramount, especially with pivotal discussions approaching with U.S. heads of state. This narrative could center around forging robust trade agreements and addressing shared economic interests, enabling Africa to speak with a unified voice. Moreover, entrepreneurship and new investments are recognized as essential drivers of Africa's economic growth, which must accelerate by 8 to 12% annually to combat poverty effectively. This ambitious growth hinges on harnessing local talent and adopting sustainable practices that uplift communities. Central to this endeavor is Cargo Plugs, a company dedicated to ensuring transparency in shipping costs. By addressing previous frustrations faced by customers, this initiative not only enhances the customer experience but also fosters trust in the logistics process. In this landscape, building strong relationships with customs emerges as a critical strategy for providing accurate customs duties and advice to clients. Such an approach ensures that logistics operations run smoothly, paving the way for enhanced efficiency. Access to various ports beyond Lagos can serve as a remedy for congestion, streamlining shipping processes across the region. Exploring alternative ports becomes essential for elevating logistics efficiency in Nigeria, fostering a more interconnected trade network. Meanwhile, northern African countries like Egypt and Morocco play pivotal roles in the production of major brands. This reality underscores the importance of regional collaboration, highlighting how interconnected efforts can foster mutual growth. As free trade agreements loom on the horizon, they present an invaluable opportunity for Nigeria to strengthen its economic ties with neighboring nations. Such collaborations can set the foundation for a thriving economic landscape. Lastly, the resilience and proactive spirit of Nigerians shine brightly in this landscape, promising positive changes in the logistics sector in the years to come. With determination and innovation, they are poised to drive Africa's trade into a prosperous future.
Biz this week here on Arise News. From shifting tariff regimes to supply chain redesigns and rising food insecurity, the global trade and logistics map is being redrawn as major economies weaponize tariffs and tighten rules of origin. Countries like Nigeria are being forced to rethink how and where they trade. But amid the volatility lies opportunity, whether it's the rise of e-commerce corridors connecting Africa to its diaspora or commodity exchanges creating new price transparency for farmers. The trade and logistics conversation is no longer just about containers and customs. It's about resilience, strategy, and tech-driven disruption. Joining me to unpack these are two leaders shaping Nigeria's role in the global marketplace. Akpata Balogun is Group CEO of AFEX, Africa's largest commodities exchange, and he's helping to build smarter, more efficient markets across the continent. We're also joined by Ujama Akpata, co-founder of Cargo Plug, a tech-enabled cross-border logistics platform bringing affordability and efficiency to international shipping from Nigeria and beyond. Great to have you both on the show today. So I guess my first question is really around everything that's happening, US tariffs and all of that. How is that providing an opportunity for the industry, the logistics, the trade, the commodity space? I'd love to hear from both of you. Start with you, Jama.
So I think the thing is now there's more of the opportunity for Africa to take center stage. Africa is already the spotlights with a lot of people looking at our entertainment and fashion space. But now that everything is shifting from the likes of China, people are moving to Africa for production. So it's our opportunity to showcase the products that we have here in Africa, and also with the AFTA, focus on producing...
That's the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, yes.
Yes, mm-hmm. So it gives us the opportunity to produce more here in Africa and also become not just buyers like we normally are, but like global suppliers to the rest of the world.
And you said, people are moving to Africa for production. I was just talking to someone before about Temu and Shane, how they're ordering from Temu and Shane. So we'll come back and kind of peel back on that. Ayodeji, what about you?
So first is that, digital native. Digital is the mainstay now. I was having a chat with a colleague and they was talking about his buying decisions. And it was like, saw a very vibrant colored restaurant. And it was like, I've not seen them on Instagram, so I'm not going to buy them. And I was like, well, it's funny that, you trust social media for your buying decision. But I'm sort of on the opposite. I want facts and data. So I think first is that digital connectivity of Africa creates an opportunity. And I think that needs to feed into our Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement to say, how can we as Nigerians buy coffee from Kenya easily? And I don't have to import my, buy my coffee from Costco when I travel to bring for the office, when I also sell coffee in Kenya. So that connectivity on how to move products, services, I think the services are done extremely well in terms of entertainment from Nigeria, and vice versa. But I think fundamentally we also need to create more rooms for trades of goods between the continent.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point because whether we're talking about oil or cassava, any sort of trade policy affects Nigeria, it affects Africa. So in your mind, Ayodeji, what sort of trade policies are necessary to really insulate us from these global disruptions?
So first is the connectiveness within, right? So first for me, fundamentally, is when people move, product moves, ideas move. Yeah. So how can we move within Africa freely without a visa, for instance? That's an easy thing that can be solved in one sitting of the AU. That should be done. Second thing is that Africa has to have a collective selfish interest. We need to articulate what we want as a collective, as a market to the rest of the world. And that should lead our negotiations, right? Thirdly is to then facilitate the movement of products within, right? So the trade corridor, Lobito Trade Corridor, the connectivity between Cote d'Ivoire and Nigeria, the roads, more rail projects. How can we really power the infrastructure that drives trade? Yeah.
So, Kike, I know with what Cargo Plug is doing, you're doing a lot of international shipping. The research says we lose about $4 billion to sort of poor logistics and disruption. So how do you see digital infrastructure? Are you incorporating that in what you do in terms of shipping? How can that actually help plug some of these challenges?
I think, first of all, I would say digitizing the whole customs process. That's one of the most important things. That would be able to make sure that it's efficient. Second of all, tracking seamless tracking. Everybody wants to know where their goods are. Nobody wants to play the guessing game. And that's something we do at Cargo Plug. We always make sure that the customer, it's part of the service we provide to you. You know where your goods are. In addition to that, the customers should also, I think if you digitize everything and you don't have good road infrastructure, then it's a waste of time. So that's one of the major things. The government needs to invest in good rail and road infrastructure as well. In addition to that, it's just giving people that transparency, giving them the ease of making payments. So you want to be able to pay your duty fees online simply without, thinking about how to get that done. So those are certain ways we can kind of improve the logistics.
So
space
I'm curious to know,
digitally.
you ship across Africa.
Yes, we
right?
do.
So
we do.
where is the biggest bottleneck? Can you talk about countries? Have you sort of shipped from Comoros to Abidjan? I want to know what you're seeing on the ground in terms of the reality.
So, we ship everywhere in Africa, and the biggest issue is even shipping to Ghana is expensive. And the reason for
More
that
so
is,
than Nigeria to other countries?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You'll find that shipping within Africa sometimes is even more expensive than shipping to the UK. And that's just because the road networks are poorly done and the infrastructure is not there. So a lot of times the services we're using are going to Europe first before they come to Nigeria. If we're using the road networks, it takes so long and there's so many customs checks on the way that makes it so difficult, and that cost is passed on to the customer. So you find that most people in Africa are just thinking, you know what, I'll rather just order from Temu, for example. It's cheaper for
and
me
I know it's
than
coming
going,
from China,
exactly,
one stop
than coming through Nigeria.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I want us to talk a bit on the sort of soft commodity side, because obviously what FX is doing is quite disruptive and revolutionary. So we've been talking about agriculture and supply chain and inflation. What are some of the new trends we're seeing with regards to trade of soft commodities, not just within Nigeria, but within the region?
So one of the things is the rise of commodities exchanges as a tool. Today, particularly the private interest, private capital coming into this versus government setting up these commodity exchanges or commodity boards. And what you've started to see is forces that you have price transparency, which empowers the farmer. So imagine how markets work. Millions of farmers trying to sell very small, but very big buyers, very powerful buyers. So the commodity exchange creates a platform where you can aggregate many sellers into one order, and that makes the trade happen seamlessly. And the prices, there's better bargaining power for the farmer. Second is you start to see a price trend. So today, we have a price data report that compares prices from different markets in East Africa and West Africa. So you can start to say, why is prices going up in Nigeria but going down in Côte d'Ivoire?
Okay.
For the same commodity, on the same board, on your screen.
So it's a Pan-African platform.
So we're building out a Pan-African platform. We're currently in 4 countries, and then we're slowly graduating. But Nigeria is the hub. Nigeria is 1 out of every 5 African is Nigerian. We produce the biggest volume of these commodities. So it's a hub that can create the same way you have sort of the London Metal Exchange, out of London, but delivery happens everywhere else. So we're trying to build out that infrastructure from Nigeria for Africa.
Yeah, so which commodities are you seeing more activity around? Which particular agri-commodities are you seeing more?
So maize and soybeans is a very interesting one. Every time you take a kilo of chicken, you're actually 4 kilos of maize and 1 kilo of soybeans.
Okay.
So maize and soybeans.
Why is chicken not doing well?
So chicken is doing well.
Right.
So maize and soybeans feed into
the
protein
chicken because
value
they're
chain.
feed, yes.
Exactly, for the feed. So it's maize and soybeans. So those are some of the fastest
And the maize and soybeans
growing
from
commodities.
Nigeria?
From Nigeria.
Okay.
Nigeria produces the largest volume of maize.
So we have buyers from other African countries as
well.
well?
So there's quite a number of cross-border trades. So
Okay.
number one, Nigeria feeds most of the countries on the Sahel. So our grains go to, a lot of countries, Niger, Chad. You also see some trades, cross-border trades between Benin Republic. But fundamentally, we also have a large, growing population to feed. So we
already have enough demand here.
Huge demand, and we're producing at yields that are half what is obtainable in other countries, with the same kind of natural resource that we do.
Sure.
So if we double that, then Nigeria could be doing 30 million metric tons of grains, and we could be feeding 10, 12 countries. Same way Brazil feeds most of North America. So that's sort of the potential we have, but it takes concerted investments to make this happen.
Absolutely. Are you transporting any agri products as well?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We are to the UK, US. I think with the jackpot syndrome, a lot of people outside the country, UK, US, Canada, are very popular routes for sending food items.
Okay, food items. Okay. So I want to ask you about some of these initiatives. You know, sometimes the rhetoric is very strong, Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Are you feeling any tangible impact from some of these initiatives on the business and the supply chain? So cargo shipping within Africa, has it actually been positively influenced by the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement in any way?
Not that we've seen for now, but it's not to say it isn't happening.
Okay.
But in Nigeria at the moment, we haven't really felt it. However, some businesses are benefiting. Some agricultural businesses are benefiting.
Okay.
But as a logistics company, I don't think we felt that effect yet. But in other parts of Africa, as they sign off on the agreements and start implementing it, then I guess we'll start feeling the effects. But we can see that people are very interested. We're having conversations with people from different countries that can't wait for everything to be set up so that we can start that free trade.
And what about the kinds of policies or government interventions that will help make your part of the business, your sub-segment, more efficient?
So what the government can do is include companies like ours in when they're creating platforms. So for example, like the customs, if they're creating a digital customs platform, the best thing to do is involve the people that are actually moving the goods. So, and we're starting to see them have roundtables. So the government's having roundtables in NIPOs. Courier companies, we've attended a few roundtables where they've asked about, gotten our opinion to try and build and do better, which is exciting. I think also in terms of giving us access to the data and policies as well would be interesting for that. And then carrying the small businesses along with everything that's going on. It's all well and good to carry the bigger companies, but the smaller companies are the ones driving the economy, the smaller logistics companies. So I think everyone feeling like they're a part of something would actually help to encourage change and collaboration.
Yeah, so, and you make a very good point because of that disconnect sometimes between sort of government policy and small business, which then brings me to the issue around global trade. I've been following AGOA for a few years, since my university days, doing international politics of Africa and all of that. And then now I look at all the tariff measures that have been imposed. What impact have you seen directly on what you're doing in terms of the commodities exchange, the digital platform, and the impact on agricultural produce? Is all the noise around Trump's tariffs just really noise? And is Africa so disconnected from the rest of the world that we're not really feeling the impact as much as we should?
No, so first is that, rule of economics, the whole world is a contagion, right? So Africa isn't disconnected from the rest of the world. We're very connected and these things affect trade. We've seen certain instances where because of the uncertainty of, the timing of the tariff breaks, buyers have said they've dropped on orders to say, I'm just not going to pick the shipload because if it comes in and I have to pay the tariff, and my competitor brought it in 2 months ago and didn't pay the tariff, I will be less competitive. Yeah. So you have some of these challenges really play out. But when I look at things from a mid to long-term view, some of those things naturally will end towards the end of the year. Everybody starts with the same tariff for the same products. And then, first is Africa must come with a collective narrative. There's been talks from the United States government to say they're going to be a meeting with Africans' heads of states towards the end of the year. What is our single narrative? What is our economic agenda? What's our selfish interest that we're going to put forward? Is it Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement? Is it expanded trade? Is it really falling into the narration of moving from aid to trade? Is that and I believe really strongly in that. I believe that the future of Africa trade, contribution to international trade, but also development of the African continent is through the power of entrepreneurship, the opportunity that new investments from the West can bring, talent exchange. Those are really the catalysts that will develop Africa and make our economy grow 8, 9, 12% that we need to grow year on year to really drive people out of poverty.
And I'm really curious, the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, which is meant to grant access for certain African products into foreign markets, which products are you seeing that are in huge demand in Western markets? I'm very curious.
Yeah, so if you look at Africa as a whole, so textile trades, leather have been some of the ones that have enjoyed the most around AGOA. So fabrics from East Africa, primarily leather products. Our finished products have enjoyed a lot of tariff and a lot of sort of integrated into American supply chains. Products from Nigeria, for instance, have been like cocoa liquor, butter, which are products that have high value processed, have also and then sold into confectionery. So we have a trade link on a program that connects farmers sustainably with full traceability, growing cocoa out of Western Nigeria into brands like Ferrero, in the United States.
Okay.
So those kind of programs enjoy the AGOA, and there's a lot of move, both from Africa, but also within DC to really extend AGOA and make it become a mainstay, but also make it a bit more inclusive that can really help farmers like that because they then get a premium, buyers can pay a lot more for the products, understanding that they don't have to then have this double tariff and levies.
Yeah, interestingly, Kike, when you were talking about cargo shipping, I kind of scoot back to 2014 when I was moving back. And when my container arrived with all my furniture, books, and everything from the UK to Nigeria, and how many weeks it took me to clear and all the money I had to pay. And in my mind, I was just thinking, this customs service is such a nuisance. I know there have been improvements. Yeah. There have been improvements. So I want you to tell me specifically what some of the issues are. What can be done to tackle these issues? What improvements have you seen and what you would recommend to the policymakers?
So some of the things we've seen is the lack of transparency, first of all. And that's one of the reasons why we started Cargo Plug. We also moved back from the UK to Nigeria and we were frustrated.
Oh, you were a business in the UK?
No, my business partner and I schooled in the UK and moved back to Nigeria. Sure. And we struggled with getting things, from the UK high streets. We couldn't understand why it was so frustrating. And that's why we built this business. And one of the things we didn't have back then was transparency in terms of cost.
Yes.
So all the extra customs duties. So you can't really budget
and know what you're going to pay at the end of the day.
Exactly. And then, that's passed on to you. It affects your experience as well as a customer. And we felt that. And now, so one of the things we're very passionate about is giving you your costs upfront. So we're able to do that.
Is that really possible? Can you really give people shipping costs upfront? Because isn't it until you get to the point where you have to receive your goods that you finally figure out what you're going to pay?
No, you can give them because you know the contents, you know what the codes are.
But can you control the activities of the customs officers at the port?
That's why you have to build relationships with customs, Nigerian customs. No man's an island. So as a logistics business, you have to build relationships with regulators such as the Nigerian customs. So with that, you're able to have foresight in terms of customs duties and advise your customers ahead. So that transparency is the first thing that, we're very passionate about. And we've seen the change in that. Secondly, as well, things like payments, being able to make payments. You don't want to now send things to the country and then you're looking for somebody else to help you make payments. And we're grateful for companies such as Paystack that have made it easier for people to be able to make payments ahead. I think another thing would have to be just in terms of having access to other ports. So what we find is there's a lot of congestion in the ports, but there are a lot of other ports available.
Which ones would you like to have access to?
You have Tinkan Island, you have the On-Air port. So
and why don't you have access to that?
No, I mean, we have access to that now, but most people tend to just want to ship to Lagos. But Lagos is not the only port that you can receive items from. Depending on where your business is, there are bonded terminals, there are other dry inland ports that you can bring things into and store there. So that would reduce congestion and reduce traffic at the port.
Sure.
So those are a few things, just the transparency, making payments online, having access to other ports, and building relationships with the stakeholders. That's super important.
You have to have the whole customs relations department. But I think the port access thing is also about the efficacy of the ancillary infrastructure around the ports. Because having access to the ports is one thing, but if the roads, the ports are not good, then it kind of reduces the attraction of that particular port infrastructure. But as we sort of wrap up, Ayodeji, what is the one bold move from your perspective? You're trading or facilitating trade in soft commodities, agricultural produce, and we talk about how agriculture is like the future and, the get out of jail card for most African economies. What is the one bold move that you think Nigeria needs to make in this agribusiness space?
We must position ourselves as the investment destination of choice. We have the markets, in 20 years, Nigeria will be the third most populous nation in the world. Africans by 2050 will be 1 in 4. Nigeria must position itself as the top destination, the manufacturing hub for the African market. That must be our pitch, and we must consistently create policies that support this narrative over the next 15, 20 years.
Okay, that's a good one, because at the top of the show, you mentioned the fact that people are now moving to produce in Africa.
Yes.
And my question is, where are those production hubs? Where are those manufacturing hubs? Are we replicating India and China in that model?
Yeah.
And what then excites you? So can you give me an example of how this trend is emerging, and then what then excites you about the future of trade and logistics for the continent?
So I think, yes, a lot of production is for fashion and manufacturing is happening in Northern Africa.
Okay.
Egypt, Morocco,
Okay.
you'll find a lot of the brands, the big brands, are actually producing in Northern
Even the
Africa.
luxury brands,
yes. And
yeah.
the cosmetics as well in Egypt as well. It's huge. So it's something that we all need to kind of tap into. I think for us here in Nigeria, we need to start building those corridors into those countries to see how we can access and work together, especially with the free trade coming in. Because I know that those countries are very keen on what's happening with the AFTA. I'm super excited because I know that Nigerians are very resilient people. We don't wait for we're very resilient, and we don't wait for things to happen.
Okay.
We go and we push for everything. So I'm so sure over the next couple of months with the right infrastructure, we would see, next couple of years maybe, we would see an improvement in the logistics space.
Thank you very much. Great discussion. Well, I've been talking to Jama Akpata of Cargo Plug and the group CEO of the really disruptive Afex, Akpata Balogun of Afex, I guess, one of Africa's foremost commodity trading platforms.